Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Arizona Wildcats Hard Edge Camp 2015. I'm David Kelly, joined by our Tucson News Now sports columnist Anthony Gimino. And Anthony, before camp started, I put out my 7 players to watch. Now you've got your 5 players that people need to know. And I want to start with the defensive line because I had 2 defensive linemen on my list, Sharif Williams and Marcus Griffin. But we've kind of seen an emergence, and we talked about this in our last commentary, from Luca Bruno, and he's one of the guys you have on your list.
He is. He's not a guy who's played a lot. But he's been running first team. I know everybody wants to talk about the Marcus Griffin, the Sharif Williams, the 4-star guys, the big names in recruiting for people who follow. And it's little old Luca Bruno, who's not so little anymore. He's 280 pounds, which is why he's now able to play defensive tackle, which again is kind of a no glamour spot on the Arizona line. But he is going to be asked to rush the passer a little bit, and he's developed some pass rushing, and he's ahead of everybody else right now. He's in the starting 3 on the defensive line.
And nose tackle, obviously, in a 3-line set is very important to clog up space and allow guys like DeAndre Miller and Scooby Wright to flow to the ball and have a chance to get to the quarterback. This is a deep group of wide receivers. It has been for 2 years, but Tony Ellison could be a guy that sneaks into the mix.
He's a redshirt freshman, and he's fast. And what Nate Phillips told me when the guys reported to camp was he always gets the, hey, you don't look like a D1 receiver. He's not super big. He doesn't look real athletic, but he's probably one of the fastest guys on that team. He says he runs a 4.4 hand-timed 40. He said electronic time is probably a 4.5. But he worked in the slot in the spring and inside. Now in camp, they have him working outside behind David Richards. So they want him to be flexible with his positions, kind of learn all the spots. But he's a guy who's had a lot of buzz around him all camp.
And all of a sudden, the offensive line, which I had thought going into camp on paper was pretty much set, even though you had to replace some positions. We knew Freddie Tagaloa was going to be on that left side with Lenny Maiava on the right side. But now all of a sudden, with the injury to Carter Wood, it is a bit of a mess with Cayman Bundage now moving to center. And a lot of guys competing at that left guard position, but T.D. Gross might be a guy that eventually wins that job.
It looks like about after a day or so after Carter's injury, they moved T.D. Gross into that spot at left guard, and he's held it now for 3 or 4 practices. And he's a redshirt junior, came in with Rich Rod's first class, and he's a guy that when you went to practice when he was a freshman, either after practice, coaches, people in the program would say, hey, you see that guy over there? He's going to be really good. And they'd be pointing at T.D. Gross. So, he's gotten bigger, stronger. It's taken some time. And for offensive linemen, that sometimes happens. They don't all come in and be superstars right away. So it looks like as a junior, as a 4th-year player, his time is now.
All right, we've given you 3 of Anthony's 5 players that you need to know. Who are the other 2?
The other 2 are Jamar Allah, free safety, he's played some in reserve, but he looks to be one of those potential playmakers that the defense needs. And the other one is tight end. I know. We're talking about an Arizona tight end,
yeah.
Josh Kern. Now, here's a guy, he was a quarterback. He was recruited as a quarterback by Mike Stoops and his staff. And in one of the great upsets in college football, a quarterback didn't transfer after he didn't win the job. He stuck it out, changed positions, and if Arizona uses a tight end, and we think they are, and they actually are. He's the first string right now. I think Josh Kern, Trevor Wood are your top 2 tight ends at the moment. So Josh, another guy who's been really patient, put in the work, put in the time, and maybe 2015 is his time.
Well, Josh Kearns was one of those 7 guys that I had on my list, and I didn't tell Rich Rodriguez this, but I'm one of those skeptics that does not believe that they are really going to throw the ball to the tight end. You mentioned safety and Jamar Allah. I really like him, and a guy that I'm also keeping my eye on is Paul Magliore, who I thought showed a real nice ability to hit during the spring game. So we'll see how he as well transitions. All right, stay with us here at Tucson News Now for our continuing coverage of Arizona Wildcats football.